You know, it's a community that raises kids, so, you know, it doesn't matter what color, what race, you know, stop. Get them away from the shore.
Tonight, the community comes together in Winnipeg to remember a young boy swept away by the Red River.
What is the cost of doing nothing?
And a signing in Ottawa on child welfare, but with no timelines or money attached to move the legislation forward. Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Child welfare reform came into force on January 1st to begin the transfer of CFS to Indigenous people, but the criticism has always been there that there was no funding attached. Indigenous Services and the AFN has agreed to begin talking dollars today. As Todd Lamoran reports, both parties want the status quo to be a thing of the past.
What is the cost of doing nothing?
Indigenous Services Minister Mark Miller made the comment after signing an MOU with National Chief Perry Bellegarde, admitting Ottawa has done a miserable job, resulting in an estimated 40,000 Indigenous children in the child welfare system.
We ask people to think about what the cost is of inaction, and we've seen it, and you can price it increasingly, and it is much larger than, frankly, the cost of investing into what is the most one of the most precious, if not the most precious asset.
The signing will result in a joint fiscal table to identify the budget needs in order to implement C-92, the Child Reform Act. Bellegarde was hopeful that a looming federal deficit due to the COVID crisis won't interfere, especially to new spending on health and housing.
So we have to continue with those investments, and that's what I call them, investments. And even in spite of COVID-19, these are things of getting basic fundamental human rights and getting First Nations people to the starting line as the rest of Canadian society.
Minister Miller was reminded that not all provinces are on board. Saskatchewan has expressed reservations, and Quebec has launched a constitutional challenge of the law.
This will require some sitting down, some difficult conversations with Indigenous partners at the table, and not simply among federal and provincial officials.
Bellegarde was asked if Quebec's rejection amounted to systemic racism. He disagreed and said it was a province trying to protect its jurisdiction from an Indigenous one.
In C-92, First Nations law is paramount. It's clear. And that's the first time that other governments have recognized that First Nations law is paramount, above federal law, provincial law, when it's developed. But now it's implementation time.
Miller did not say when full control will be handed over.
Now that will vary from community to community. It's not something that will happen overnight or at a set time point. This will take many years.
Miller says an ask for funding for the next fiscal year has occurred. His office could not confirm if that will be revealed during Wednesday's federal fiscal snapshot. Todd Lamoran, APTN National News, Ottawa.
A Brandon, Manitoba couple locked in a bitter battle with Michif Child and Family Services over the son of theirs who was taken at birth scored a major victory after self-representing at a week-long trial as the Child Welfare Agency fought to keep the boy in care in a non-Indigenous foster home despite him being Métis. The judge has ruled that the agency might have been able to justify some concerns about the boy, but has no grounds to keep him, and ordered them to return the now 14-month-old. Joining us now are the parents who we cannot identify under child welfare laws. Thanks for joining us. You've said that it doesn't feel like much of a win because you've lost 14 months of your son's life, but many parents who are fighting for their children see this as a huge victory. To those who have been following your journey, what would you guys want to say to them?
Don't give up at all. Don't really sign much of anything if you can help it.
And you guys self-represented as well. I know we did a web story. You were saying that you feel that that was probably the best decision you ever made was to self-represent because lawyers weren't really taking your case in the direction you wanted to go. The agency has come up with ever-changing reasons for taking your newborn son on a birth alert. One that's remained consistent is that mom is on the child abuse registry after being pressured to plead guilty to failing to protect an infant daughter 6 years ago when she was in an abusive relationship with the baby's dad. What do you think that this means to women who are abused, that they can have their kids snatched?
Honestly, it's terrifying because that means no matter how much you change your life around, that they can just take your children for no reason, essentially, in the future.
Yeah, Dad, your thoughts on that?
I got thrown into all this. I had I have no idea how to feel on it. I mean, I got a deliberation for what, I'm not sure. I haven't done anything, so I'm not. I lost a lot of time with my son.
After the judge's ruling, the Métis authority that oversees Michif CFS said that they would respect the ruling and they would return your son within 3 months that the judge demanded. So what does the transition plan look like? You guys have met with Michif CFS. Tell us, what's the plan to have him home?
Well, visits are going great. It's wonderful. We met with them again to further a plan to have them in our house overnight and hopefully permanently by the end of July. Whether or not they stick to that.
Well, yeah, you guys have some reason to be doubtful because this has dragged on for a long time, for sure. You have both said on the heels of the victory against Michif CFS over getting your now 14-month-old son home, your next plan is to fight for the return mom of your 6-year-old daughter who was made a permanent ward. How is this going to happen? What's the plan?
First, see what information I can get in regards to my daughter, and then basically go from there. If she's permanent, I'm going to be starting to try and get visits going with her and essentially get her home to us permanently and make our family whole.
Our last interaction was our house was inspected for her to come home, so
yes.
That needs to happen.
Well, and just a reminder to our audience who might not know that you were in the process of getting that girl back home when you were pregnant with the son. Once CFS moved in to take the son, then all the visits stopped and the wheels ground to a halt to get your daughter back. So you guys are having to kind of restart that. Well, thanks for taking the time to share this with our audience. I know it's something that a lot of people have been watching very closely, and thanks so much.
No, thank you. And anyone who's listening that is going through the same thing, thank you all for your support. I really don't know how to get through this.
Yeah.
A public vigil was held in Winnipeg on Monday to remember 9-year-old Darius Bezecki. The boy died after being swept away by the current of the Red River while playing in the water. Daryl Stranger has more.
Monday evening saw an outpouring of support on the banks of the Red River in Winnipeg for the family of Darius Bezecki, including members of the Winnipeg Police Service, Winnipeg Fire Department, and the community. Bezecki was riding his bike with his 2 brothers and a friend when they entered the river through a beach-looking area. It was here Bezecki was swept away, and the family is using this story as one of caution.
Got too close, and, just hope if anybody ever sees kids playing by the water, it may not be yours, but, it's a community that raises kids, so, it doesn't matter what color, what race, stop. Get them away from the shore. That's the biggest thing, so that nobody else has to go through what the family has gone through.
The public also lined up to shake the hands of emergency personnel as a thank you. Darius was found by a fisherman Sunday afternoon after 48 hours of extensive searching, which included a dive team from the Winnipeg Police Service and a thermal imaging drone. While painful, the news brought the family some closure as they remembered him for the joyful kid he was.
Always smiles, always smiling. Just hard, he'd brighten the room up because he'd come out with a big smile, hug, great, and he just loved it. Just awesome kid.
Daryl Stranger, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Yet another video involving police conducting a wellness check has resulted in a Saskatoon officer being placed on leave and an Indigenous community demanding more. We have that after the break. First, here's tomorrow's weather. Off to the east coast, we've got 14 and cloud in St. John's, 18 with a mix of sun and cloud in Halifax. La Grande River, 22 with cloudy skies. Kuujjuaq, 19 and some rain. Montreal, lots of sunshine, 34 degrees. Quebec City, 29 and sunny. Ottawa, 33 with some cloud and showers. Windsor, 34 and cloud. So Lookout, rain and 27 degrees. Cap is Casing and Timmins, sunny and 31. 27 for the Paw, 26 and sunshine for Puckaswagan and Thompson. 29 and sunny for Winnipeg, 26 and sunshine for Brandon. Swift Current and Regina both cloudy and 28 degrees. Estevan cloud and 29. 27 and cloud for Meadow Lake with a chance of showers. 23 and sunshine up in Stony Rapids. Welcome back. A Saskatoon police officer has been placed on leave after a video surfaced of a man being repeatedly punched during an arrest. Now from CTV's Kristen Ajikude.
The Indigenous Joint Action Coalition and Black Lives Matter Saskatoon has released this video of Saskatoon police arresting a man in a backyard on the 500 block of 11th Street East at around 2 p.m. last Saturday. At first, a lone officer is seen trying to arrest the man, but a few minutes later, the officer is joined by several others. The man is hit and officers use a taser. Police said they were responding to a complaint of a suspicious person.
There was officers that jumped over the fence.
Local resident Frank Collins recorded the video. He says the man was trying to cool down from the heat and used the neighboring apartment's garden hose. He feels police used too much force.
I did express that what he was doing was unnecessary, that it wasn't needed.
You really need people to step up, everyday citizens as well.
Erica Violet Lee, a spokesperson for Indigenous Joint Action Coalition, says the man's name is Evan Penner and community organizations like the Lighthouse have worked with him. She wants the officers to be fired and the police service to disband.
No one deserves to be brutalized by the police in the way that Evan Penner was.
In a statement to CTV News, the Saskatoon Police Service says not all of the interaction was recorded in the video except the use of force, and the effects of addictions and related mental health issues were present. Chief Troy Cooper added, "I recognize this incident was a traumatic event for our community. Whenever force is used, we are accountable, and I want to assure the public that this is being taken seriously." The officer involved has been placed on leave until an initial review can be done, and the Saskatchewan Public Complaints Commission has started an independent investigation. The 27-year-old man is now facing several charges, including assaulting a police officer, disarming a police officer, mischief, and possession of a controlled substance. The Saskatoon Police Association could not comment on Monday as they are still reviewing the video. The Indigenous Joint Action Coalition says they will continue to support the man until he sees justice. Kristen Ajikude, CTV News, Saskatoon.
While the COVID-19 pandemic has delayed many projects across Northwest Territories, concerns around climate change, housing and cultural preservation have not wavered. Our reporter Charlotte Morit Jacobs brings you this sneak peek on upcoming stories from the Yellowknife Bureau.
Imagine having to tread lightly while on the land because of fear over thawing permafrost, or spending years on housing waitlists while living in deplorable conditions. How about wanting to preserve important cultural histories tied to the legacy of residential school? I'm Charlotte Morit Jacobs, and soon APTN will visit those stories as we take a road trip to the Date Show, referring to the mighty Mackenzie nestled in the foothills of the NWT. Home to roughly 2,200 Dene and Métis amongst 6 communities, it's a big region with a lot happening. We'll revisit stories on housing, see what changes are happening on the land, and learn about one community who took a stand against residential schools in the 1950s.
Has the Black Lives Matter movement changed reluctant minds when it comes to racial sport team names? We've got a Washington, D.C. journalist joining us after the break to discuss. Stay with us. To northern Alberta, we've got 25 and some showers for Fort McMurray, 20 and rain in Grand Prairie. Lethbridge, 17 with a mix of sun and cloud, 19 and mix of sun and cloud in Calgary. 20 and mostly sunny in Vancouver, 24 with some rain in Kamloops. Prince Rupert, 16, Prince George, 21, showers in those communities. Whitehorse, 14 with some rain. Dawson, sunny skies and 21 degrees. Wauhee and Yellowknife, both sunny and 21, 19 and sunshine for Norman Wells. Inuvik 16 and sunny skies. Colville Lake 15, mostly sunny. Baker Lake and Chesterfield, some cloud and 11 degrees. Repulse Bay 9 and sunshine. Tallyoak 14 and sunny. Clyde River some snow and 4 degrees. 12 and sunshine for Cape Dorset. Welcome back. With some pro sports teams under growing and unprecedented pressure to abandon their racist names and logos, many are asking, are things finally changing? Jamie Pashagumskum reports.
Last week, the Washington National Football League franchise agreed to, quote, do a thorough review of their name. The pressure came from large corporate sponsors like Nike and stores like Target pulling Washington's merchandise off the shelves. Carla Fredericks is a professor of law at Colorado University. She has been advocating for the team to change its name for decades.
So we've had a long engagement with FedEx. We've also had engagements over the years with Nike and Bank of America. But the recent work that we did is really about trying to hold these companies accountable to their stated commitments on racial justice, which we really owe a lot to the Black Lives Matter movement for carrying the torch on that. And we're just trying to say that, if the companies make statements on racial justice, that should include their treatment of Indigenous people.
On Monday, Fredericks and other Indigenous leaders and activists sent a letter to the NFL commissioner asking that Washington be forced to change its name. North of the border, similar pressure is mounting on Edmonton's Canadian Football League franchise to change its name too. Under revived scrutiny, the team issued a statement saying they conducted an extensive research and engagement program with Canada's Inuit community regarding our team name. We announced the findings from that program several months ago, which included the fact that there was no consensus among the Inuit people and considerable support for the team's name among Inuit in various parts of northern Canada. We recognize that there has been increased attention to the name recently, and we will ramp up our ongoing engagement with the Inuit communities to assess their views. The statement angered many on social media, including Nunavut MP Mumlak Kakak. She says the team should pay compensation for the harm it's done.
And if a CFL team who makes a ton of money off of a derogatory term that Inuit and our ancestors have based for decades, well then really where are we in 2020 and what does that mean for our future? Right now is a really huge opportunity to be able to shift how we think and how we perceive stereotypes and assumptions of Indigenous peoples and Inuit.
Kakak also says getting the team to change its name could help Inuit gain allies to address crises in the north, like housing, food insecurity, and suicide. Jamie Pashagumskum, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Julian Brave Noisecat is a Washington, D.C.-based journalist. He recently wrote an article, Do the Right Thing, Change the Name of Washington's NFL team. It's a subject that he says has tortured him. He joins us now from Washington. Julian, you wrote in your story about how you've avoided writing articles on mascots and even having conversations about them. Can you explain why?
Sure. I moved to Washington, D.C. 3 years ago in 2017. Before that, I always believed that, as Native people in the United States and Canada, we had bigger fish to fry. We fall to the bottom of virtually every statistical category.
Mm-hmm.
And as a journalist, it wasn't, I'll be honest, it wasn't the story that I wanted to write or wanted to tell.
Mm-hmm.
But when I moved to this city in 2017, I was surrounded by that umber buffalo nickel head logo everywhere I went. And I always wanted to start a conversation with the people I saw wearing it, who often were, Black folks who are from here in DC.
Mm-hmm.
But I never knew where to begin. So I eventually actually got an assignment and was confronted with that sort of personal racial struggle.
You also compile a list of many things that Native Americans have done to try to change the Washington NFL team name, petitions and lawsuits, many more. Why do you think that this is the time that it might work?
The United States and, tangentially Canada are in a moment of reckoning for the police killing and brutality against Black people. And I really do think that this has changed the zeitgeist
Mm-hmm.
on issues of racial injustice. I do not believe that we'd be having this conversation about finally changing the Washington football team's name if it were not for the Black Lives Matter movement.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, also the second half of that equation is that last week, a group of investors totaling over $600 billion in their net worth asked the main sort of sponsors of the team, FedEx, PepsiCo, and Nike, to pressure the franchise to change their name. And I think the combination of the sort of cultural shift that we're undergoing right now with regards to race and the fact that money talks has significantly transformed this particular issue.
So, what needs to happen to see other teams change their names or their mascots? Does it take like one big one to make the change, or do you see them being impacted or to change some other way?
Well, we've already seen the Cleveland baseball team suggest that they're going to consider changing their name. They're called the Indians, and just a couple of years ago, they removed the offensive Chief Wahoo logo from their memorabilia. So I think that, there is a moment of reckoning. Actually, last week, I also was really excited when I saw this story circulating that said that Patrick Mahomes, the stud quarterback of the Kansas City football team, was not going to sign a deal with the franchise unless they changed their name and mascot. I was really disappointed when I found out that tweet was actually fake news and a real hoax, because I actually texted my mom and sent a Slack to my work saying oh my God, Mahomes, exclamation point. He stood up for us, because it meant a lot to me, as a Native person, that a Black athlete would take a stand for us. It meant a lot when we saw Colin Kaepernick show up at Alcatraz to honor the history of the occupation there this year and in years past. So I hope that this is not the end here. Of course, we should not be celebrating the history of genocide and violence against Native people on this continent on the sports field. There are many other ways that we could be recognizing that history, and having fans get drunk and don a headdress and put on fake war paint and do their sort of red face racist act is not one of them. And hopefully, this conversation continues. I think that a lot of folks are finally, for the first time, probably hearing that linguists, historians, and Native people ourselves consider the team name to be racist. And I hope that forces a conversation about many of the other Native team names and mascots that we see in professional sports and college sports.
Well, we thank you for taking the time out of your day to talk about this, and I guess we just wait and see where it goes from here.
Thanks so much for having me. It'll mean a lot to my Kia to see me on APTN.
Excellent. Well, that is your news for this Tuesday night. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Thanks for joining us. If you missed anything, be sure to hit up our website, aptnnews.ca. Have a great night.